This episode of the My Latin Life podcast is brought to you by Language Blend, the new best way to learn Spanish. Language Blend focuses on what you actually need to live and get by abroad with daily one-on-one lessons, a dedicated texting partner. It's like living in a Spanish-speaking country without ever leaving home. Go to languageblend.com for more information.
Countries want to attract foreign direct investment through direct real estate investing and then the tourism dollars that come on top of that. And that is why you have these special visas popping up. There are visas for pensioners, for real estate investors, for now digital nomads. And these are all strategies that governments are using to attract money to their countries.
Welcome back to the My Latin Life podcast. Since 2014, My Latin Life has been your trusted guide to traveling and living in Latin America. My guest today is Caleb. He's the CEO of Worldhaus, an innovative startup based in Mexico City that's fractionalizing home ownership and real estate ownership in Latin America. Caleb, how's it going?
Hey, Vance. Great to be here.
Yeah, absolutely. Are you calling in from Mexico City today?
Yes, I've been based here for the last handful of months and Costa Rica before that. So yeah, glad I found your podcast and, found other folks that have migrated from the north down here.
Yeah, absolutely. And it sounds like I'm having a bit of a run of interviewing Mexico City-based founders, and I like where this is going. So we had Ryan Croft on. That episode's already published and live. And then earlier today, I recorded as well with Joe Marullo, who I guess you know from the Mexico City scene. So I guess just drawing a bit of a connection for the audience.
Yeah, I think a lot of founders are coming to Mexico City. Joe's, a great example and a super successful startup founder here, for, the cost of living, the climate, all of the reasons that digital nomads are coming here. But you also have this added benefit of it just being so easy to connect with other founders. Like there's a couple prop tech events that have been happening and you'll see the same 15 prop tech founders and they've, all either raised money or have got revenue. And there's a few VCs that come to these. So it's a really nice ecosystem here.
Nice. So they're like friends and competitors.
Mostly friends. For whatever reason, there's not a lot of overlap, it seems, in the prop tech founder ecosystem here. So it good vibes.
Yeah, what's funny about a small tech ecosystem is everyone, you kind of just have one competitor per mini niche, and it becomes, it's not like it's a monopoly, but, or like one of those things where it's like it's like a no bid government contract type of thing where like everyone just agrees not to go at that particular mini niche.
Yeah, it does, now that you say it, it does kind of feel like that. I think also just, at least in real estate, the market is so insanely big that it would just be surprising if, even if you have the same model, you're going after exactly the same target market. So,
But I have seen a lot of companies that are doing kind of similar stuff to what you're doing. And I think we're seeing a lot of innovation in terms of like fractionalized home ownership, new types of lending models, new types of equity models. I think we're finally seeing some of that innovation in the real estate market that we haven't had for a long time. And that's partly why I wanted to have you on, Caleb, was just to kind of go over this market because I think things are finally opening up.
yeah, real estate is the largest asset class in the world, and it's been lagging over, the decades, other verticals in the economy. There's some structural reasons why it's been difficult to innovate in real estate, but those are coming unhinged now. And one of the largest investors in the space is the National Association of Realtors, who traditionally has been, one of the stalwarts in the industry. And on the fractional ownership side, it just makes so much sense. It's the largest asset for most people, and in general, like I mentioned, and there, because of sort of traditional lifestyles, there has not been an opportunity for fractional ownership because everyone wanted to have their single family home in the suburbs. And that was kind of it. That was their real estate, the life cycle of their real estate investing. And that's changing now.
Hmm. And do you think it's kind of because the consumer is changing and then new businesses are emerging to meet the changing needs of the consumer?
Yeah, one of the things that I've realized getting into the fractional real estate business is so like public education is so important. And we're lucky that Picasso, they raised over $1 billion. They've been making co-ownership, um, you know, not just a timeshare, which has historically been the mental model that folks have. And so, yeah, this industry, this segment of prop tech opened one because people have lifestyles where they actually, want to have a second home. It's not something that only the 0.1% of people would entertain. But also this idea of everyone being an investor, I think was popularized with Robinhood and, GameStop and all these things where everyone was, this was, a primary source of conversation with friends. What are you invested in? And now that is bleeding over into the real estate space with companies like Arrived Homes, where you put $50 in and you get a slice of the industry. That's a bit different than what we're doing, which is you buy at minimum a $10,000 share of a co-owned property, which by default is rented and is that product, but it also can be used. So there are different models in this space, and most of the activity we've seen actually is on the sort of the Arrived Homes $50 for an ROI product side.
Okay. Can you expand on that? What is arrived homes? I'm not even sure I'm saying it right.
Yeah, they are buying rental properties with a fund, which is a giant pool of mostly small investors. So you with $50 can now be a real estate investor, which was previously not possible.
Okay. And how do they make it possible and get around the accredited investor issue?
Yeah, so that's you know a bit of a touchy subject in the space. Some companies limit themselves to accredited investors. Others, like Lofty AI, do not limit themselves to accredited investors. There are different legal arguments around whether or not that is a requirement. Um, so, yeah, a real estate slash corporate slash securities lawyer would be the best equipped to, answer that on air.
No, no worries. I'll give you a question you can definitely answer, Caleb, which I don't think we've explained yet, which is what is Worldhaus, and could you tell us a little bit about the business that you founded?
Yeah, so we are solving this pain point of not being able to own fractions of property that can actually be used. And so the people that we've been resonating with the most are digital nomads. These are folks that usually making a bit of cash, they're traveling, and they're paying through the nose on Airbnb. So what we built is a flexible homeownership model. So somebody with, as little as $10,000 can jump in and become a co-owner on a home and immediately use the property, which would drop their Airbnb spending by 75%, or use it as a rental property, which they are, locking in a new revenue stream for themselves.
Okay, got it. And I noticed on the website too, it mentioned about kind of the savings of doing this versus renting on Airbnb, the 75%. Could you expand on that a bit?
Yeah, it's pretty simple. It's a $1,600 luxury unit in Playa del Carmen, for example, costs the owner $400. It's these Airbnbs are hugely marked up for the convenience, and a lot of people are getting paid when you stay there. Airbnb is getting paid. The landlord who's taking most of the margin is getting paid, and then all the costs associated with that. So if you own the property, you're just cutting out an incredible amount of margin that these other stakeholders are taking right now. And that's where you see the cost savings. You become the landlord.
Okay. And then what's baked into that 400 number? Like, are you amortizing your ownership, or is that just the kind of like ongoing ownership costs?
Yeah, so we can take a property example that we were working with out in Playa del Carmen. So it's a $200,000 condo. These are renting for about $1,600 a month on Airbnb. And it's about $400 in ownership. So the property manager charges 150, and then the remaining 250 are HOA fees, property taxes, utilities, and the cleaners between the co-owners. So yeah, for folks on that are listening that own a condo, it's the same cost structure plus $150 for the property manager. The property manager is, because we were giving them the contract, they then share some of that with Worldhaus, which is part of our business model. And yeah, and for the folks that own it, they never have to worry about it. That's the benefit of having the property manager. They're renting it out when you're not using the property and handling the maintenance and coordinating the revenue checks each month.
Okay. Okay. I want to approach it from a different angle, just to make sure I have a full picture. So let's just say I'm completely new to this. I have two options. I can go on Airbnb, 1,600 a month for my month in Playa del Carmen. And then, so walk me through option B, where I become a co-owner of that same place. I guess I'm putting up like 15 grand or something like that. And then there's like a monthly or annual portion to it as well. I don't know. Can you break it down?
Yeah, so you would come in with $10,000 or $15,000, depending on how much time you want each year and which month you buy. And then if you just forget about the property, you're going to get a check, which is the revenue above your costs. So first, the cash that's generated from your property goes to paying the HOA and those basic costs, the property manager, and then you get that check. And if you want to use the property, then you reserve the time. So through the application, you would designate 1 week or all 4 weeks that you want to use, and then let's say you use all 4 weeks 1 year, and you can buy more. That's just the minimum buy-in. Then the $400 for that year would be paid.
Okay. Okay. So let's walk through the branch tree one more time. So let's say I don't even want to stay there. I just want to invest 15K in a Playa del Carmen condo with you guys.
Yep. So after your time goes by, you would be getting that check of the profit for anything above your costs.
On that
And
month. So there was some
mhm,
some guy, some German tourist up in the condo for the month. So I get paid for that 1 month that guy that's designated to me, and
exactly.
whatever revenues that the property manager and you guys make during that month, that's what I get minus the cost to obviously like run the unit.
Yep, exactly.
Okay. Okay.
It's the same experience of buying a full property and then having a property manager there, except you no longer need to buy the full property, and it's set up so you can use that property and swap time with other owners on the property. So it's just take regular, buying a condo in a short term rental market like Playa del Carmen or Florida, except you only need to buy a fraction of it, except the property management is already handled for you. You don't need to go find a property manager. And there's liquidity in the co-ownership. So because there's a marketplace, we're bringing in people that want to buy your share when you're ready to sell. And through the platform, you're able to seamlessly swap time with other owners in your unit or other owners around the world, which, as a traveler, that's a huge advantage because now you're paying that 75% less. You're traveling at the cost structure of an owner, which was not previously possible.
Right. Okay. So you can swap your month with someone else for as a traveler, but I imagine you can't swap the like profit month if you guys were both not traveling.
Correct. So the way that would look is you offer 2 weeks in Playa del Carmen in exchange for 2 weeks in Lisbon. and then that time gets taken off of the rental calendar. So your friend is now staying for those 2 weeks in Playa del Carmen, so it wouldn't be rented out, and vice versa in Lisbon.
Okay, cool. Yeah, I mean, I like the sound of it.
Yeah, thanks. We're just going for ultimate flexibility because that's what digital nomads want. That's what we want. So any period of time can be rented out, which is the default, personally used, or swapped with other owners in the ecosystem.
And I did, by the way, I told you offline, but for the listeners, I did sign up and make a profile as well on worldhouse.co. So anyone listening to this, go to worldhouse.co, sign up. We'll obviously it's linked up in the notes to the episode. And so what we're seeing here is we have properties in Mexico City and Playa del Carmen, in Tulum, a bunch of different spots. I guess it's all Mexico for now.
We're also in Costa Rica, and we've got some really cool conversations going on. Yeah, in other parts of the world. Like there's one group, Semkovo, out in Bulgaria, and they're buying and renovating an old Soviet hotel, and they're specifically marketing to digital nomads. And these units are going for 15,000 euros for the full unit. So we're fractionalizing, and we're getting it down to below 2,000 euros for a co-ownership. So yeah, we're starting in these super popular markets, but there are some really cool properties around the world that we've been chatting with.
Yeah. And you guys are not the property managers, right? Like there's you guys and then there's the manager.
Correct, and we set up that relationship. The owners, of course, have full control over who the property manager is, but we get everyone started with the property manager that we vetted and we're using for other properties.
Okay, yeah, makes sense. And you have quite a number of different units on the website already, like in different geographies. So I guess you're probably working already with a variety of different managers.
Yeah, we have relationships based on the region. Some property managers are hyper specific, and then some are national.
Yeah, this is awesome. I mean, so how have things been going so far? Have you seen where's most of the interest been coming from?
Yeah, it's been really cool seeing how people react to the product. We're a year old, so we're still relatively new, but we're seeing a few different profiles of folks. So there are the digital nomads that we set out to work with, but then there are also the real estate investors that are seeing this as a diversification strategy for them. So rather than buying a full rental property and name your city, they're putting a fraction of the investment into one property, and then they plan to expand their portfolio around. And they're also getting exposure to markets that are not easy to get exposure to. And then the third market are vacationers that want to lock in. This might be the more traditional timeshare market, the people that just want to lock in an affordable vacation every year. But they're saying, unlike a timeshare, this is real ownership. It's not just a lifetime lease, and there aren't these weird legal clauses that make it difficult to sell. It's actually streamlined for resale. So those on the demand side, that's what we're seeing. And geographically, it's been beach condos. It's been these affordable luxury beach condos that are 200,000 or 250,000. Some even a studio might be 150,000 that we've been getting heat on.
Are you having buyers from just the United States, or I imagine international buyers as well at this point?
I don't know if this is because of our distribution channels or if this is just the market of international co-ownership, but it's been hugely US. Some Canadian, but definitely US is by far the majority of our clients.
Because I think the idea is that you get paid out in the U.S. Like if you're an owner in this, um, like you don't need a Mexican bank account, right? If you're buying in Mexico, you just do it all through the U.S.
Exactly. Yeah, that's a good point. I think that is part of what's attracting Americans. It's the legal structure. It's set up as U.S. LLCs, so folks don't need to touch Mexico at all. They're buying a U.S. LLC which is named on the deed, and they're getting paid out from a U.S. LLC, and the tax laws are as such. We issue a K-1, and yeah, it's oriented to a US structure.
Yeah, that's awesome. Are you able to give us any metrics in terms of like how many units you've brokered or how many people have signed up, stuff like that?
Yeah, so we've got 25 real estate development partners. We opened up for business actually last week. So we put our first sale on the market. We've got 2 tours scheduled on that, 5 inquiries from that first email. And we've got over 350 signups with $0 spent on marketing. So we're at this precipice now where our conversations with investors are going a lot better because we've got $50,000 of revenue of qualified leads in our pipeline that we're working through this property in Playa del Carmen, and so we got some pretty significant commitments on the investor side, and you know launch the MVP. So we're now focused on distribution and sales and getting these properties over the finish line, and building out this playbook that we're going to be repeating on a per development basis.
Yeah. And tell us about Product Hunt. So you guys launched on Product Hunt and it seems to have gone well there.
Yeah, that was our sort of soft launch a few weeks back. We got 275 upvotes on the first day, which for a small team that didn't do any paid ads, really good. We got ninth place globally out of over 100 startups, and the top companies all were big, startups or firms that may or may not have advertised their launch. So we were really happy with that. We got Ryan Hoover, the founder of Product Hunt, to comment and review just on his own accord, because it seems like he's a digital nomad himself and interested in what we're doing. And it was super successful for us. We got a bunch of folks reaching out on the demand side, and a couple of real estate developers reaching out. So, we really appreciate that publicity.
Yeah, that's awesome. It seems like you knew how to do Product Hunt a little bit because I think it looks like you kind of got reviews from people you might have knew from like accelerator programs or school or something like that. So it seems like you did know what you're doing with this launch a little bit, which is awesome.
We went really hard for about a week before the launch to learn how to do it. And I had a buddy that had done a Product Hunt launch. And then on launch day, I reached out to tons of people to get their feedback on what we were doing. And some of those people left reviews and, um, you know, upvotes and things like that. So yeah, I mean, we tried to, we tried to perform. It wasn't just to throw it in and see how many upvotes happen.
Yeah, I mean, definitely a good place to start. Um, is that something that always inspired you? Like, have you been on Product Hunt for a long time and kind of been following that and thinking yourself, I gotta launch something one day?
It's definitely, I mean, having, a friend that did it, and it definitely has its place in the cultural zeitgeist of Silicon Valley. There's lots of companies that launch there, and it it proved its worth. I was kind of skeptical, honestly, going into it because it's so hyped up as, you must build out a visual prototype or MVP and get some numbers and then launch a product hunt and then use that to raise money. And then it's very much part of the traditional startup playbook. Uh, but I mean, it's true. I recommend it to founders now. And yeah, I mean, it, I wouldn't put too much time into it, but it's a great way to get some eyeballs on what you're building. And now we're talking about it on a podcast. People, for whatever reason, like to talk about Product Hunt, and I think it gives it this sense of sort of tangible launchiness that attracts people. Like, oh, something is happening that was not happening before, even though in the eyes of the company, nothing has changed. They just decided to do this marketing play.
Yeah, it's almost like the birth of the startup.
Hmm. People like the origin story to feel like they're there from the start.
And what else did you do to launch besides Product Hunt? Were you using other platforms as well?
Not really. We're thinking a lot about distribution now that we have everything we need to sell. So I can jump into that a bit. We really believe in channel partners because there are folks, real estate brokerages and real estate developers that are already, in some cases, running $100,000 marketing campaigns that are getting all of these leads, which they can't do anything with. They can't sell, they can't commercialize somebody with a 100K budget because there aren't any units for 100K, at least that they would want, as an international buyer. And so they literally delete them from the CRM. So that's part of our, I'll call it go to market. We're a bit past the launch phase, and then we're doing some stuff with some other strategic partners and going on podcasts like this, and yeah, we're going to be doing paid marketing coming up. So yeah, that's how we're thinking about it.
And sorry, what did you mean about the 100K units right there? You're saying that you is one of the things kind of that you're finding a market for these unwanted units.
Unwanted buyers. So if somebody comes to a real estate developer that their cheapest unit's 150,000, their budget's 100,000, that conversation doesn't go anywhere. Doesn't matter how motivated the buyer is. Their budget's not big enough to buy a unit because these developers are only selling full units.
Okay, yeah, I got you. Yeah, you're basically lowering the barrier to entry to real estate investment as a asset class,
Exactly.
or direct real estate investment at least.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so, what kind of returns can people expect? I know you can't guarantee anything, but have you kind of modeled that out?
I can talk about some numbers from, let's just use this Playa del Carmen developer, for example, Levitate. They are in their financial projections, which they are currently renting out units on Airbnb, so these are pretty good. They're showing a 17% ROI. 7% of that is cash, and 10% of that is appreciation on the property.
Okay, so 7%, like kind of cash on cash returns.
Hmm.
Okay, that's not bad. That's pretty solid, and that's after paying the property manager.
Yeah, that's in profit.
Okay, cool. And are they necessarily using Airbnb, or how is the property manager marketing these units?
They're doing multiple short-term rental sites, but Airbnb is totally dominant, so that's the majority of the outreach there.
Okay, yeah, it definitely makes sense. And so these, can you talk a little bit more about kind of that relationship between the property manager and the buyer and what that's going to look like? Is like, and what you're, do you guys kind of envision Worldhaus having continued involvement, or is it kind of more of a handoff?
We want to make it as easy as possible over the life cycle of ownership for folks. So this is going to be a combination of handling as much as possible through the platform. So you go on the application and you would select the dates that you want to use. So you don't need to talk to the property manager, and they can alert that these are the dates that they can't rent out. And there'll be a requirement, you need to do it 30 days in advance or more. But the owners will have the phone number of the property manager. So if anything goes wrong, they're also acting as a concierge if they need a restaurant recommendation or they need to know what's the going rate for a taxi. They have sort of localized questions. They're benefiting from that direct local relationship, but we're streamlining as much as possible to make it easy on the owners and through our platform.
Okay, yeah, that makes sense. So sounds like people will just kind of do everything through the Worldhouse platform in terms of uh, reserving their time and stuff.
Yeah, and the property manager, will be uploading the revenue reports and the maintenance reports to the platform, so those are all saved there. And uh, the property manager doesn't have to worry about dealing with 10 different communication streams. It's the important stuff is going on the platform, but if a co-owner needs the property manager for something, they'll be able to contact them.
Yeah, that definitely makes sense. That's probably best for both parties. So the manager's
Yeah,
not too overwhelmed with dealing with like 10 different people.
exactly. Yeah, there's got to be a happy medium there.
Yeah, it makes sense. I did have a question. Maybe this is out of order of the flow, but do you, and I'm just kind of guessing here, do you, purchase the unit up front and then sell the shares? Or do you wait till you have 13 committed shares to then purchase the unit? Or how does that whole thing work?
We don't purchase them upfront. So we act as the broker when there's a sufficient number of co-owners interested in a unit, and then we lead that transaction on behalf of the owners. This keeps our model light, so we don't have to raise the billion plus that Picasso raised, because they are actually buying properties, then renovating them with an in-house team. So already you need two specific skill sets and teams and capital to do those two things. And then they're reselling it 6 months later. So we cut all of that out of our model.
Yeah, yeah, that's definitely sounds like a different model. I don't know that business well, but I'll have to look into it. Um, and then, so how do you determine when you've kind of generated significant interest? Do you wait till you have six or seven out of the 13, or how does that work? Can you just kind of walk through like the unit acquisition process and all that?
We do deposits on calendar time. And once there's a full calendar, that's when the property closes. The properties all have variable pricing, so we don't expect the desirable months to sell out any faster than the less expensive, less desirable months. We're also marketing to diverse geographies. So, actually in Texas, you want to leave during the summer, which would be a foreign concept to somebody in New York or Boston. And the variable pricing makes that calendar filling easier, because otherwise, January and February are going to sell out in an instant, and July and August are going to just hang there.
Yeah. So how do you get around that issue? Like in Tulum, like no one wants to be in Tulum in the summer. And so if it were me and I were the investor, I only want between October and March, basically.
You're going to be paying more for that time, though. So the
Yeah,
ROI is going to be
I'm down to
similar.
pay a little bit more for that time. That's fine. It should cost more. That's supply and demand. But you have to fill up all 12 or 13 slots of the year before progressing with the unit.
Yeah, it does not seem as hard as it might sound, because there are just so many people with different lifestyles. Digital nomads, for example, they've been attracted to this idea of getting a discounted off season, and they're going to make it their home base. That some of these people like when a town is empty,
Yeah, no, I get that.
and
I do have tons of
yeah,
buddies that live in Playa del Carmen year round. I don't know how they do it, but they do.
but
Um,
yeah,
but yeah, I guess so. But what happens like when the unit is no longer available because it took too long to raise all 13 pieces?
we're only working with real estate developers right now, and they might have 100 units for sale. So it's part of our growth strategy is to work on the supply side with businesses rather than individuals, so we don't need to worry about that. When we have scale, it's going to be a lot easier to flip a property online, send an email out to 10,000 people, and say, "Hey, this is going to be, we have 1 week to of this on our platform." That's just not the scale we're at now, so we're taking a different approach.
Yeah, in some ways it reminds me of like Kickstarter type stuff, where it's like we have 28 days to raise, and if you contribute, then you get like this benefit.
I'm glad you brought that up. Our business model is almost exactly Kickstarter. We On the supply side, you have real estate on Kickstarter, it's startups, and then you have the buyers who are individuals who are contributing, and they're buying fractions of an asset instead of a company. Or in Kickstarter's case, you're not getting any equity, you're just kind of getting membership. But these equity crowdfunding platforms that are carbon copies of Kickstarter except with equity, that's what we're doing. But instead of a company, it's a house.
Right, right, right. And there were a few of these companies in the previous generation, like Fundrise, and you probably know the names better than me. What
Mm-hmm.
happened with those guys?
They're killing it. And Arrived Homes has that same model. It's you're pooling huge amounts of capital to get ROI. It's a bit different though, in that you have no attachment to those homes because you own $1 in 100 different homes. It's purely an investment product
Yeah, you don't even
that
know what you
you
own, and I think in that previous generation you could never stay there. It wasn't like a lifestyle thing.
Yeah, and there's also been some liquidity issues with these models, which folks can jump into. I mean, I personally use them and I love them. It has a great place in the marketplace. It's just a different model than what we're doing.
Yeah, I can kind of see like the evolution though, you know what I mean? Because you have to look at those as the founder of Worldhouse and be like, how did those, because they were kind of unicorns, right?
Hmm.
Fundraise. And I know there were a bunch. I feel like this was almost like pre-pandemic in that
Hmm.
like 2019 range, or maybe even more recent, where people were doing these like fractionalized investments for the first time. And then there was like, yeah, I mean, people probably know this stuff, but and they were doing it against student loans and stuff too. You got to fill me in here.
It's this trend. I mean, people call it the securitization of everything.
Mhm.
The average person is insanely more financially savvy than they were 30 years ago. And people are both on the consumer side and on the startup side, like us, are realizing that you can securitize. I shouldn't say securitize, that beckons the SEC and securities regulation because they're not all securities. But you can split up an asset and use that asset, invest in that asset as a group. And I think part of what's played into this is people are getting more comfortable with this idea of the sharing economy, sharing
Mhm.
cars and Uber, sharing homes with Airbnb, Zipcar, also on the car side, the electric scooter startup scene. So you have this financially savvy populace combined with them being more inclined to share, and you have a lot of businesses now capitalizing on that.
Mhm. Mhm. Does the individual unit have like a board, or if they have to make decisions that require a veto and stuff like that? How do you handle that?
Yeah, there's a governance mechanism. The property manager, yeah, takes care of 90% of things, but if they want to build an addition or sell the unit as a group, then there's a vote that takes place.
Yeah, that's so funny. That's so funny. You just own this, 1/13th of a unit, and you get an email one day being like, we wanna put a jacuzzi in there," and you're like, I guess.
Yeah, yeah. That's the experience sharing something.
That's awesome. So the first units are going for sale. Tell us about these first units.
We're focused on affordable luxury. So these are, 200, 250,000, 150,000. They have, in most cases, in-house gyms. They're, in the case of the coastal properties, a walk or a bike ride to the beach. This property in Playa del Carmen has co-working space in the building. Some of them have rooftop pools with bars in them. They're generally highly rentable. These are places that people want to be on vacation, or if they're remote working for a month or two. Just that's part of what we're doing is we're talking with and curating the properties that are attractive at good price points and offering amazing amenities and high quality construction.
And can you up your ownership, or do you have to keep it as is? Can I buy like multiple stakes?
It's a free marketplace, so on the primary sale, you're going to be locked into the amount of time that you put an offer on. But after sale, you could say, "Hey, I'm looking to buy another share for X amount. Any takers?" Someone says, "Hey, yeah, I'm going to do that." They put the share up for sale in the marketplace. You close on that through the application in a few clicks, and yeah, we're a marketplace, so we're constantly driving traffic so that people can buy and sell in a more liquid way.
Yeah, it makes me think like, what happens if someone just buys control, or you had a separate business model, which is like 51% ownership, and it's almost like you can. it's almost like you're financing your ownership of the condo by Airbnb-ing it the second half of the year.
That's something that people want to do is they want to buy a piece of the apartment, use it for some time, rent it out for the next, so which basically locks in a free vacation for them with the time that they're renting out, paying the bills on the time that they use. So they're just living for free pretty much. We have governance protections in place for people with smaller shares, so they don't get totally screwed over by somebody that wants to do something crazy. In general, people are aligned in that they want the unit to be functioning and look nice and be rentable. So there's governance docs that go into details on what can and can't be done.
Yeah, definitely makes sense. Yeah, it'd be cool. You could even do it as like a family, Everyone
Definitely,
gets their
yeah.
money.
There have been friend groups that we're talking to, and they're each going to buy a month, and then they get the full property all year round, whenever they want. And it's a group of friends that have known each other since college, so they just jump in and they just do whatever they want with it.
Yeah, there was a blog post that really had an impact on me from Tynan. I'm not sure if you know what I'm talking
Yes,
about.
yeah.
Okay, do you want to explain it to the audience?
Basically, Tynan. I love this article. Tynan did what we built a business around by himself 10 or so years ago by getting his friends together to buy properties all around the world and then stay at them and swap time in them. So he bought a property in I think he bought an island in Canada. He got a place in either Prague or Budapest. I think somewhere in Latin America, and then
Japan.
he just Japan. So yeah, he just kind of jumps around to his co-owned properties. I've been trying to get in touch with Tynan actually, and because what I want to talk to him about is he is a pioneer in this lifestyle, but I would be curious what him and his friends have found with liquidity. Because this is, co-ownership of real estate's been happening for decades. They're a group of partners at a law firm might get together and buy a place on Cape Cod in Massachusetts and use that property together. But the problem has always been finding friends for that full calendar, because you mentioned you think it's going to be hard for us to find a full calendar. Imagine somebody that wants to do this on their own without a full marketplace and a marketing budget and all of this. And then on the resales, when somebody wants to get out, how are you going to go and try to convince a broker who's, I can tell you, is not going to pick it up because the commission's too small since it's only a fraction. That's what's kept it out of the mainstream. And yeah, I would love to have a conversation with him about the pain, if there is any, that he's experienced over the years of co-ownership in this traditional way.
I'm sure his answer would be just like, look, you got to look at it as a one-way deal. But that's not the fun. The fun part is financializing it and doing wacky math to bring it back to life.
I I would be curious if his co-owners say the same thing, that I'm okay with this one way deal for my whole life, because now it starts sounding like a timeshare, which is just who can make a decision for your whole life. I mean, marriages
Well, I
aren't
mean,
even lasting a whole
they're
life
buying like
anymore.
100K. Yeah, I think they're doing like 100K things, and so it's like 10K each. It's like, look, you
Mm,
got to be. I think he kind of said like, only do this if 10K is not significant to you. You know what I mean?
mm.
Hey everybody, quick break from the podcast to tell you about Language Blend, the best new way to learn Spanish. Language Blend was co-founded by Jake Nomada, friend of the podcast, decade of experience in Latin America, and Jake and his team, they put everything into this program that they wish they had in terms of how to level up quickly with your Spanish language skills. Because the faster that you can get conversationally fluent in Spanish, the better the experience that you're going to have in Latin America. So go to languageblend.com for more information. But the interesting part of that, like plunking 10K is fine, but then it's the ownership or the maintenance cost piece of that, right? So if it is one way, but you got to maintain it forever. How does that work? And
Yeah.
I remember I'd have to dig it up, but I know he had some kind of clauses to build like a fund, and I forget if they had like a couple years, like maintenance fund ahead of time. You know what I mean?
Hmm. Hmm.
Um, the best way to do it is if you could like have a you have and this wouldn't work for you guys, but you would own a 100K property, but then you'd have like a 500K fund behind it that the interest that you make off the fund just like pays for the unit, and so that way the unit can like live in perpetuity forever. This is
An endowment for a property.
an
The problem
endowment,
with that
yes, an
though is
endowment.
yes, but I have a sense with people that are willing to pull up 500K in endowment on a rental property. These are the top 0.1% that they don't care. They're just going to buy the
Yeah,
full place, and that's what we found. The people that we're talking to are not
yes.
0.1% people.
No,
These
I
are
know, I know. We can get back. You know
yeah
what my thought is though, because I know this is totally off topic, but this is what you do with like your, Caleb becomes the guy that gets rich, and then he buys like his mansion in the suburbs of Boston, and then it's like your family home and you want it to be your family home for like 200 years, and so you put an endowment behind it in the trust or the will, so that
mm,
when you die there's like an unrevocable trust. It's bulletproof, the kids can't get at it, whatever. And the trust only can be used like for property management of the property, and that's how you keep the property in someone's hands forever. Because what can happen is if you have a gigantic mansion and the
yeah,
property taxes are like 20K a year or whatever, sometimes the next generation is like, we can't even pay the property taxes. And so
right.
you're kind of handling that.
It's a funny concept. I've never heard of. Actually, there are these big industrial revolution mansions that got turned into
Yeah.
museums.
Like
Yeah, and they have
in Rhode
endowments that keep them
Island,
running.
in Rhode Island and
Yeah,
stuff.
I think I've been to that one.
Yeah.
Do you remember the name?
There's like the Breakers and all these ones in, what is the town? The listeners know.
Yeah.
Where the Tennis Hall of Fame is. Why can't I name the town? Anyway, people know. Um, where were we? But yeah, so Tynan's model. Go back to kind of how he was like a pioneer and how this inspired you.
I only found out about him a couple weeks ago, but I am inspired by him. What he said is, I want a brighter future. I want to live a more exciting life, and I want to be post national. And so I'm speaking for him. I've never met him. I've only read the article. So, Tynan, if you're listening, feel free to jump in the comment section and set the story straight. But he just wanted something more, I think. And, that those are the same, that feeling is the same feeling that people that, are signing up and getting ready to buy with us have. And it's just possible now. And we've streamlined that and standardized it. So instead of going through, because that was a passion project for him, he needed to learn the rules in all of these jurisdictions. He needed to pay the lawyers to get everything set up. He needed to find the property managers. And in his article, he talks about how much work it is. And not everyone's prepared for that. That was his passion project first, I think years before he actually pulled the trigger. And so, yeah, we basically make that easy.
Yeah, I get. Well, it was a multi-year thing because they kind of bought like one property a year, and I'm actually looking at his Twitter right now. It's at Tynan. If anyone's curious, Tynan, and his location. Get this, Caleb. So his location is Vegas/Budapest/Hilo/Tokyo// island emoji.
Yeah, that's amazing. That could be everyone. There's no reason that can't be everyone now.
Yeah, there you go. Makes sense. And I did notice on your website, when people create a profile and they're looking at the properties, it says this property would qualify for the Mexican investor visa. Just the fact that it says that on the website tells me you're kind of thinking about that. Do you want to expand on that angle? Because not every real estate person is thinking that way.
Countries want to attract foreign direct investment through direct real estate investing and then the tourism dollars that come on top of that. And that is why you have these special visas popping up. There are visas for pensioners, for in real estate investors, for now digital nomads, and these are all strategies that governments are using to attract money to their countries. Costa Rica, for example, it's $150,000 in real estate, and you get the real estate investment visa, which puts you on the path to permanent residency and then citizenship in Costa Rica, which is really attractive to a lot of people. And other countries have different flavors of that investment visa, and the digital nomad visas are typically 1 year, and then you can renew for another year. You show remote income, health insurance in a lot of cases, and you get to live and work your job in that country for that time.
Yeah, it definitely makes sense. You know, Nicaragua is a great fit for this.
Nicaragua has political issues, which are much more complicated. I like Nicaragua, but the reason we didn't start in Nicaragua is because of the politics there.
Yeah, yeah. They have. We have a video on our channel that we did a webinar with a Nicaragua real estate promoter there, and it's for an agroforestry project. And you get residency in Nicaragua through investing in this business, basically.
Mm.
And
Hmm.
uh, what's funny about the program is buying a house is not a qualified investment for residency in Nicaragua because they don't
Mm.
just want people snapping up houses. But
Hmm.
if you were to do a hotel or a Airbnb and own a fractional piece of a business, then that would count as being qualified for investment. So if you took this model that you guys are doing, did it in Nicaragua with a business, you know, the part ownership, etc., it should line up nicely in some ways. And so maybe you don't want to go into Nicaragua, but I guess it just speaks to how this is something that governments are encouraging.
We've started some semi-related conversations with folks that are already working with governments to attract digital nomads, because a digital nomad might bring, let's say, $30,000 a year in essentially tourism dollars. But if you can get them into co-ownership, on top of that 30K, they're bringing another 20K right off the bat. They're bringing the $400 a year per month they own on top of that. And then they're bringing more friends into town. They might start getting involved more in the local community, and they take a step away from floating on top of the community and their Airbnbs and just spending money at restaurants and nightclubs into a real stakeholder, which is why you're seeing people try to attract digital nomads, and then and B, in these early conversations, why governments and the organizations that they're working with excited about getting digital nomads into home ownership.
Hmm. Hmm. Yeah, I think there's kind of a natural evolution where digital nomads, they start out, they enjoy the freedom, but eventually they are down to kind of transition into being slowmads or expats, really getting residency permits, living somewhere a little bit longer term. I mean, most people I talk to, they want to stay abroad forever. They just think it's better
Yeah,
than the US or
yeah.
the UK or whatever. But you know, it's just it takes. It's like you start enjoying the freedom a lot, and then you learn to value the routine.
People still want community. We're social animals, and it's not like I have this conversation sometimes with investors that are like, "How why are you launching a homeownership product for a group that is just traveling all the time?" That's just not true. For the first year or maybe two, that is true. But we're still people that want to settle down and have roots and assets. So yeah, I agree with you. And it's funny you mentioned the term slowmad. We're launching a tool which we're probably going to call slowmad list, which is our
Okay.
it's it, yeah, it's our take on the best spots for more mature digital nomads in their 30s that want things that more mature digital nomads care about, like quality of education and safety. And we're gonna rank Nightlife a little bit less, although it'll still be there, to just get a different take than Nomad List, which I think is oriented more towards this slightly more backpacking and transient audience that people typically associate the term digital nomad with.
And how do you create community around what Worldhaus is doing? Is there any community element around the co-ownership with the other co-owners? Like, do we necessarily know each other, or other things that you guys do?
You do know each other, and 2 days ago we launched our communities feature, which is a group chat for everyone interested in co-ownership in each of our cities. So if somebody goes to worldhouse.co right now and goes to the marketplace, and they'll see the communities tab, and they click on Playa del Carmen, that's a hot link to a WhatsApp group for everybody interested in learning about real estate investing in Playa del Carmen, or living in that town and just getting started. So yeah, it's going to be an ongoing evolution for how we engage with the community, but it's something we're already thinking about and launching features for.
Yeah, yeah. I don't even know if I want people to know that I'm in on this unit. It's just it's a tough one. Yeah.
It's not public information. So if you wanted to, it's choose your adventure. If you don't want to give your name to the co-owners, you don't have to.
Yeah. It's kind of trippy. I'm just like thinking about all these edge cases just for the fun of it. But it's like you might have a situation where 5 or 8 of the co-owners are public about how they own part of the unit, and then the other ones are like in silence. Or how does that work?
It would work just exactly like that. It's just some people just don't talk about their share, and nobody is overlapping with time. So you could opt to never meet the other owners if you wanted.
It's so funny. Like it's like your checkout day, their check-in day, and it's like you're the Trump supporter in the group chat. You know what I mean? Like it's like I don't even want to own a co-own a unit with a Trump supporter, even if I never meet them. Who knows? It's kind of weird.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, we hope people will be mature. and, and I mean, worst case scenario, it's owned separately as separate memberships, and checkout times are
Dude, it's
different.
kind of weird to know who they are if you're not going to overlap. I don't know. I'm just like, it's kind of weird. It's like, oh yeah, I kind of own this unit with like some random couple from Cincinnati, and then these older people from Florida, blah blah blah. It's like, it's kind of like a mind f.
I think it's gonna feel like people in your condo building. They're there most of the time. You don't talk to them, but if one of them's really cool, then yeah, you might spark a friendship there and see where it goes.
You know what though? I'm actually very down with this concept. I wanted to make sure and ask you about. So, how does this work when let's just say you become a really big fan of the model? I'm a big fan. I could easily see myself buying into Playa del Carmen. I got tons of buddies there. I could easily see myself buying into other places, maybe Medellin or something, right? And so, how does I imagine as you start building this out, maybe if we talk again a year from now, you'll have people that are actually buying stakes in multiple different places, like all around the world, right? I guess what we're talking about. And I guess you'd get to 12, right? You could be like, yeah, I got one for every month of the year, or 13, I guess.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. We should do an annual check-in, because that's exactly what we're building towards. It's a ecosystem where folks have liquidity and buying and selling properties all over the world. That not only is there liquidity with ownership, there's liquidity with the time, so that they can swap time in the units they don't have. To every unit we're adding increases the ability to travel at the cost of being an owner. And yeah, I'm super excited. We've been building this for a year, and we're gonna have our first sale here in a couple weeks. So it's a good time. We're having fun with it.
Yeah, I'm pretty down. And by the way, when people switch times, is there any money that changes hands? Like if I switch from July to January, you know what I mean? Like that's obviously there's a value differential there.
There's no money changing hands. Likely, you will, for a higher quality time, offer less time to the other person. So maybe offer 2 days, or let's say 2 weeks, and they give you 3 weeks.
Ah, okay. So you can do a day's value differential.
Yeah,
Okay, okay. And by the way, my math is terrible. So I guess we're doing all the units are going to be like 1/13 ownership. Like 13 is the
yeah.
magic number. How did we arrive at 13?
There's 13 4-week periods in the year. We didn't want to go with the 12 irregular months. Rather, it's all standard 4-week periods. Four times 13 is 52 weeks in the year.
Dude, you're blowing my mind.
No, it's funny because we talked about that for a long time, and there's some pretty crazy calendar math because years
Yep.
are not exactly 365 days. Like, and then obviously months are different numbers of days, and
Right.
so yeah, if you list out, not every year starts on a Tuesday, for example, that changes.
Yeah, you're creating hell for your developers that have to deal with all these like date time edge cases.
We've got a calendar in the back end that they look at, so they know who's coming what time. But yeah, I mean, it's kind of just like scheduling software there that Airbnb hosts deal with too.
If your developers are listening, I'm taking February, and I'm going to assume you guys are going to code a. There's going to be a bug in the code for the leap year. I'm going to get an extra
Yep,
day.
that I invite you to try that strategy. We'll see what happens.
Hey, February is a good month anyway for Playa del Carmen.
It is. February is a great month in Latin America.
I could see myself doing like 1 month Playa, 1 month Tulum. Or here's the thing: is I only need like 1 month in Tulum per year, typically January,
Mm-hmm.
and then the rest of the time I can be in Playa. And
Mm-hmm.
so I guess I probably need, if I want to do 3 months in Playa, I need like three steaks. I need 3 doses of Playa and then 1 dose of tequila, and then hopefully you guys get Mazatlan at some point.
Now you're starting to sound like one of our clients. You've got your lifestyle. You know how much time you want. It's not just 1 month typically, and yeah, you would get your home base and a vacation spot on top of that.
And is it all new constructions? I'm guessing the properties.
Yeah, this is all discounted pre-construction. So actually, a couple are already built, but we notice people like this idea of pre-construction. We also like this too. That's how you get the best deals on anything that's resembling a new property. Otherwise, you're going to like an auction on a foreclosed property. So we really like this segment of the supply.
Uh huh. Uh huh. And then how does that work with like pre-construction? Typically, you're only making some payments. You're making staggered payments, right? Or you're only paying a certain percentage upon delivery. So it's not really. Do you even need the whole 15K at once, or do you only need like 7K to start, and then as the unit gets delivered, there's more money. Blah blah blah.
It's in the best interest of everyone if we take the full asking price upfront from the buyers and then give it staggered to the developer. So if somebody, for example, if we did a different model where somebody only puts half upfront and then they decide to drop out, then
Hmm.
that screws over all the other co-owners. So yeah, but in another scenario, we take everything upfront and then give the developer everything upfront. That increases the chance that they don't finish the unit. And so the happy medium here is upfront co-owners and then staggered to the developer.
Yeah. So how do you deal with delays?
We work only with developers that have histories. It's nobody that this is just a side project for them. These are professional development companies that have a lot to lose if they don't deliver, and then the staggering of the payment. So they're incentivized to bring it out on time.
Yeah, no, of course. I mean, I'm actually looking at a unit right now, to buy the whole thing of, and in the contract it still says, expected delivery in May, and there's just no chance. There's just no
Mm,
chance based on when
yeah.
we're recording this. Uh, and it's like, so they got to go back and change the contract, and it makes me think like, how does that change things for me? You know what I mean? Like as a buyer when uh, you know what I mean? Are there any other consequences other than just waiting?
It's just, you're just waiting longer if there's a construction delay.
Yeah. Do you try to get ones that are like within 6 months of completion, or ones that are pretty quick, just so people can just to kind of like close the deal fast? Because if you're getting people into pre-construction units that are 18 months from completion, like
Yeah.
just it's still a long time to have that deal open and kind of have like the mental overhead like as a business, you know?
We like the sub 1 year, preferably sub 6 month pre construction. Developers will discount more the further out you are, so you can get
True.
some, you know, total home runs. So it's a balance, and the developers know that, so they're, pricing accordingly.
Yeah, I feel like I'd want to get in there pretty fast, especially when you only have it once a year, and it's like it's like this thing better be done by August, or it's gonna be next August.
Yeah, totally. No, I get that, and yeah, I mean, we'll find out. If they're 18 months is too far out, we might just drop those developments despite them being great deals. But yeah, somebody that really wants the vacation this summer should be aware of delivery date.
So, and sorry, I've been pestering you about so many of these details. I hope
No,
people
it's great.
find it interesting. Um, how do you see World House and this type of fractional ownership fitting into like the larger changes that are taking place in terms of remote work and digital nomadism?
Our take on remote work is that, I mean, it's a couple of things. So one, if you look at a distribution of the age of companies and the remote work policies, it's hugely disproportionately young companies in favor of remote work. And what that means, just like any adoption curve, if it's the young companies that are the ones supporting remote work, over time, that's going to support the overall number. And the other piece is just how desperately people want remote work. There's a stat that came out last month for job applications in February, and there were of fully remote jobs were 19% of the total jobs in the U.S., and they got 51% of job applications. So when you have young companies who will eventually become big and dominant companies, and employees heavily pushing for remote work, I think that kind of answers the question. You see these flashy headlines of JP Morgan, everyone back in the office. But, these are old companies that are run by 60, 70-year-old managers that their COVID career was like 2% of their working life. So it's not a difficult conclusion to come to that. Yeah, they're going to shift back to what they've known and what has worked for them. But long term, it seems pretty obvious that we're moving towards a much more flexible working world. And Worldhaus, that unlocks the market for Worldhaus, which is we can now offer that flexible home ownership, which is fractional and managed and swappable. That just makes more sense for people with this lifestyle that don't want, just have one real estate transaction in their life in the suburbs of Boston or San Francisco, and for to just that be their whole portfolio.
How's your digital nomad journey been personally?
It's been pretty awesome. That's kind of why I started the company, is because I think a lot of people are going to be doing this. And yeah, I had a remote job as a product operations manager in an electric scooter sharing company. And so, I was all over Europe and the US living out of Airbnbs, paying a lot, and but having an amazing time working at a Spanish co-working space, and then going to a midnight amusement park in Vienna, and your life just gets more full when you do this lifestyle, especially if you can pair that with a community. And there's just no going back once you do it. Um, I'm trying to think of a historical example, and none come to mind. But it's just been really special, and there are a lot of people that you connect with along the way that have taken this new lifestyle, and there's some interesting data, but I see this play out where you have some of the most talented people in the world that will take a menial but fully remote job. One of my friends, she was in top, X percent at Harvard, and she's just doing online tutoring because it's a fully remote job, and she could be making 200K at a consulting firm, but she's not. So yeah, it's special, and I hope everyone has the opportunity to give it a shot.
Mhm. What city were you living in before you moved to Mexico City?
I was in San Jose, Costa Rica, which for people that know Costa Rica would call it a bus stop. But it's actually really nice if you stay in Escalante, which is kind of like Condesa in Mexico City, their equivalent. And then you take weekend trips because they have $5 buses that take you all throughout the country, Puerto Viejo and Tamarindo and Playa Hermosa. I'm really excited for San Jose long term because as soon as they get that community resembling anything like Mexico City, it's just going to explode because the weekend potential is completely unmatched in the world. The climate is better than 98% of the world. The government is liberal and democratic, and the population's educated. Uh, English is spoken pretty well. It's safer than most places in the tropics. So, yeah, big fan of that place.
Hmm. Interesting.
What about you?
And, and
Where have
what?
you found these?
Oh man, I wanted to ask though, in what U.S. city were you in most recently?
Boston. Spent the last 7 years uh, based out of there.
Hmm. And how's it been for you, kind of the switch from Boston to Latin America? I, Give us kind of you know, what's improved. What have been your aha moments about Latin America overall, and what do you like best about it?
What surprised me the most was the malleability of social networks here. Like, in Mexico City, I am probably good friends with like six startup CEOs. And it's just not easy to meet startup CEOs. Maybe I've never lived for long term in San Francisco, so maybe that's common there. But people down here don't have these uh, solidified social networks, so they're just open to meeting cool connections. And so you just end up talking to the most awesome people all the time. And then there's the more, you know, stuff that you run into right off the bat, like you can get an awesome taco lunch for $3 and you can go to a different nightclub every day of the week or every day of the month and they're all amazing with like special DJs and new takes on music. And then Mexico City specifically has an amazing art scene. So for anyone into art, there's just tons of galleries here, and yeah, I would say the social your social calendar is going to be a lot more vibrant. That's definitely not true for all of Latin America, but if you go to like Medellin, Mexico City, and I haven't been, but Buenos Aires, Puerto Rico as well, I'd put on that list. Like you're going to have a lot of optionality, and you're going to be able to do a lot more with your budget. Yeah, it's kind of been my takeaways.
I love how you said that your social calendar will be more vibrant.
It's just how it is.
And you know what it is, and I'll completely echo this, and I came to this conclusion as well, is it's your level of access is much higher. Your level of
Mm.
access to people. It's like if you want to get a drink with someone in Boston, it's like you got to schedule it a week in advance, and it's this very like stilted thing. But in Mexico, it's like totally different, and people are just more accessible, right? You'll just it's hard to explain. People will let their guard down, right?
Yeah, and I think after being in LatAm for a year, I think it's just a place that values fun more. For some reason, it just takes a back seat in the U.S., especially the Northeast, and yeah, it's just like a good vibe. People like fun, why not?
Yeah, I mean it's totally true. Like it's hard to get the meetings when you're in Boston. Like they do have some accelerators and stuff, and I know you're familiar with that, but it's hard to even like get these meetings or
Yeah.
to, and it's hard to serendipitously see people again. But I think you'd probably say that in Latin America, it's just kind of easier to get people to meet up and just easier access.
Yeah, and to echo your point, it there's just less social judgment down here. I still feel the Northeast in me when I talk to people, and I like trying to sort of scrub some of that away. But like in the Northeast, in Boston, it's academic credentials. In Washington D.C., it's social or political connection credentials. In New York, it's money and just like what is your job rank credentials. And so everyone's constantly assessing everyone else. And as an early stage founder or just anyone earlier in their career, like you said, it's just hard to get meetings. I mean, you're not like super early in your career, but it's just for anyone, it's easier in Latin America.
Yeah. Yeah, I guess once you've partied till 7 a.m. at a Tulum jungle party with a startup CEO, you probably have a closer bond than getting some lame
Yeah.
ass coffee in Boston.
Exactly. Yeah, that's the perfect way to put it.
I love hearing it from other people though. Okay. I love
Yeah.
people. I love when people complain about the rigidness of the Northeast.
Yeah, I don't know where that comes from. I've been thinking a lot about culture lately, but like I mean Northern Europe is kind of similar as well.
Right.
Germany and the Netherlands. Yeah, I don't know if it's coming from climate or religious history or what, but there's a distinct like north south social difference.
Yeah, there's a lot at play here, but it's I don't want to get us in trouble, but there's definitely a big difference in terms of culture and approachability of people, and it's just like the spontaneous nature of things where things kind of flow a little naturally, where um, you know, a dinner can lead to a beer, can lead to a next
Hmm.
invite. And what can happen is, I think another piece of it is relationships develop much faster. So
Mm.
you can go from zero to a level where you're very comfortable with someone where you've seen them like 10 times in the space of, a month. Whereas to get that same number and depth of interactions back in the states, it just takes longer. It takes longer to build the relationships because you're kind of because you're spending less time together, and partly because it's like different environments. What are your thoughts on that?
I, I had never made a friend at a nightclub in the Northeast, and that's happened to me twice here in the last I don't know couple months, and it's it's just a more open place, and in terms of the repeatability of meeting up with folks, yeah, I that you mentioned, I think part of that's just coming from people putting a greater emphasis on life. It's not all about working and then going home and being prepared for the next day and not going out because you don't want to be tired. It's really, how can I make the most out of every day, and that just causes more social interactions when everyone's bought into that.
Yeah, it's both things. It's like the locals are naturally more chill and open, but then also the foreigners that come down, they kind of have a switch that happens in their brain where they go, I need to seize the the experience or whatever. And where in Boston people would just be super lame, right? Like after dinner, they're
Mm.
just be like, "Oh, I got to go home," blah blah blah. Like in I don't know. They're more likely to say yes in Latin America for sure to that next invite or that next drink or whatever.
That lameness is harder to find here for sure.
And I think even like going out has a very different connotation in the States where it's like going out is like this whole like 5 hour ordeal where, you know, people have to congregate for a pregame and then they have to drink for 2 hours and then they have to like get in cabs and then wait in some line and then, you know, go to the venue and then, and all these like steps that it's like, oh, that must be how it happens. But in Latin America, partly due to the layout and the walkability of cities, going out is really just like popping into the place next door, and, or even
Hmm.
just like you can pop into a nightclub for like 30 minutes. You don't have to like commit this like insane like your whole night type of thing. It's just like it's like man, you just pop your head in here for a half hour. You got a bunch of friends here, like whatever. If you don't like it, just go home. Like I feel like it's lower commitment.
Do you think part of that's the affordability because you can't, in New York you're paying $40 cover, so you really want to get the most out of that. Whereas here it might not have a cover; it's like $10.
Yeah, I mean, I think affordability definitely has a part to do with it for sure, and the walkability. I think even like just the widespread use of WhatsApp plays a role as well because WhatsApp just I don't know just makes things a lot more fluid than having to do like old school text messages and stuff like that.
I'm going to be analyzing all of my social interactions here now.
Yeah, I mean, how easy is it to just make a little banner for like a party that you just invented or forward a banner on WhatsApp and it's like party Friday, 8 p.m., stand up comedy, whatever.
Totally.
And you just WhatsApp forwarded it to like 20 people, 100 girls, and it's you're good to go. But it's like a little bit harder to do in the States, I feel, because everyone's kind of on like different platforms and stuff.
Yeah, you also have nightclubs and bars closing relatively early in most of the U.S. New York
Yeah.
is somewhat of an exception, but Boston it's 2 a.m. Everything's closed, so it's not much you can do with that.
And what it does, the problem is it rushes the night where it's like we got to get there before midnight, and then we settle in for a half hour, and then we act like idiots from 12:30 to 1:30, and then we spend the last half hour kind of doing coat check and like I don't know, like closing up the loose ends of the night. Whereas like in Latin America, it doesn't have to have this rigid schedule because things don't really close like that, like so abruptly at 2.
Yeah, I think like such a big factor is the locals set the tone, as you mentioned, where fun matters and fiestas are part of life, and you have to take that seriously, or like, what's the point of even being alive? And that just makes for a great environment that people want to make new friends and go out and just enjoy and kind of forget the work a little bit.
Caleb, you got it out of me. I usually don't talk about nightlife and stuff like that, but I do think it is very important to highlight like the social benefits, and that's certainly one way to sell condos.
Yeah.
Any last like topics or things that we wanted to make sure to mention on the episode?
I would just say, I'm always happy to chat with anyone if they're exploring, life in Latin America, or home ownership or co-ownership, whatever that, whatever might interest you. You can reach out to me on LinkedIn, Caleb Wursten. And yeah, just, I'm here as a resource, as is Vance, for the folks coming from, wherever to Latin America.
Yeah, for sure. And so you're like in Mexico City. You're going to be based up there for the foreseeable future.
Yeah, I'm going to get a co-ownership here and split my time between here, Boston, and then kind of a range of cities.
Okay, awesome. And what can we expect from Worldhaus for the rest of the second half of 2023? What can we get excited about?
Yeah, we're going to be increasing our velocity of sales. We're going to start sending out likely a weekly newsletter with all of the best deals. We're going to be hosting webinars for folks that want to come in and learn about what co-ownership looks like for them and start to get familiar with some of the projects that are happening in Latin America. And that's our business, and we're going to scale that to other jurisdictions and have a good time while we do it.
Yeah, I definitely love what you guys are doing. I think the model makes sense, and I'm pretty tempted myself, man. I have to talk to you about this offline.
Always here for you, Vince.
Absolutely. And tell the audience one more time how they can get in touch.
Yeah, so you can reach out on LinkedIn at Caleb Wursten, or you can send me an email at caleb@worldhaus.co. And Worldhaus is spelled world, and then the German spelling of house, so Haus.
Awesome. Well, this has been another episode of the My Latin Life podcast. Again, my guest today, Caleb Wursten, CEO of Worldhaus. Thanks for listening.
Thanks.